We are blessed today to have the opportunity to hear from and speak with Marshall Ganz, a world-renowned inspirer, lecturer, and organizer for workers and humans all over the world who come together under common purpose, see a vision for that better world, and figure out how to do it together. We are so happy to talk with you today, Professor Ganz.
Well, Mandy, first, Marshall is good.
You got it.
Yeah, but well, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, to have the opportunity to contribute in a very small way to the commitment, the dedication, the sacrifice, the life-giving blessings that the people that are present. It's a great opportunity. So thank you for it.
Healthcare workers who have been giving so much of themselves on the front lines of this pandemic right now are feeling isolated and traumatized. What is one way that they can reclaim their power over these experiences?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, and it's usually not something we can do just by ourselves staring in a mirror. It usually involves other people because we are who we are in relationship to those with whom we're in relationship. I mean, this is we're relational creatures. And so that's certainly one piece of it. And look, I'm not a clinician. I can't, this is not, it's just that probably one of the oldest challenges that we've faced as a species is how to deal with loss, how to deal with change, how to deal with these challenges that we weren't prepared for, that we didn't expect. But nevertheless, here they come, and we have to find a way to deal with them. One of really the ancient way that we learned to do that was through telling stories, because stories are about that. They're about people who are trying to accomplish something. Something gets in the way, and it may be a threatening thing gets in the way. And then the question is, how can we find the courage to turn that threat into a challenge? Because threats we want to run away from, challenges we embrace. And I think the moral energy in your calling, in the calling of giving life, that's a pretty deep and powerful blessing and gift. And I suspect that's where a lot of people have been going. Whether it's in the form of your own life experience, your experience as a caregiver, as a life giver. I think what's so important is that you share that, because it needs to be a chorus, not a solo performance, because the solos don't make the music that is so important to make. It's allowing our hearts to speak through the words. It's not just the words; it's what we're communicating. And I have to think that you've already demonstrated the extraordinary resources you have for this. So telling a story, telling stories of it, is a way to lift that up. It's a way to hear one another, to share with one another, and to sort of celebrate those sources of hope, the sources of courage, the sources of resilience, because those are the stories that matter. And it's sort of like, yes, we want to share with others our wounds. Sometimes it could be very hard to share our wounds. But we wouldn't be here talking about it unless we'd figured out how to turn those wounds into scars. Mm. And sharing scars is how we show one another our strength, and it gives us the ground on which to build going forward, with solidarity, with hope, a sense of the incredible value that each of us creates in the world and what we do. And that's where that's the beginning of the power that we need to create the kind of change that we want and deserve. But it's a fight. And it sure doesn't begin and end with the story. We've got to be strategic. We got to be organized. We got to be structured. We have to build the power, the economic and the political, as well as the moral power, in order to change these institutions so that they can become parts of the solution rather than the source of the problem. But it starts with our own solidarity, our own moral commitment and courage to one another, and our own creativity and imagination.
Thank you so much, Marshall. You speak so eloquently about the power of sharing our stories, and you also hint at the fact that it can be very scary to do so.
Yeah.
As healthcare workers who are thinking about, I know more people need to understand what it has been like for registered nurses in the ICU and for midwives and for respiratory therapists, healing patients as they come back into the community. How might they, but they're afraid, how might they think about these experiences and choose to tell their stories?
Well, it's not an easy thing, because who wants to be vulnerable? And when you tell stories about challenge, stories about struggle, stories about pain, it's like you're allowing others to see your pain, to see your struggle. If it stops there, that's one thing. But that didn't stop you. You persisted. You found resilience. You're still here. And so it's the ground from which you can teach. You can instruct. You can enable others to understand what it takes, the resources it takes to deal with the pain, to deal with the struggle, to deal with the horror that sometimes we just wind up having to confront. It's important, but if you tell that story without telling the story of the pain, then, it's like saying, hey, I never had any problems. I'm fearless. Okay, what am I going to learn from a fearless person? Not a whole lot. To be, perfect too. Nothing. One of the reasons I'm a big fan of Moses in the faith tradition is because he was so flawed. And what it means is that there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn, because that's who we are as human beings. And so we can teach one another. We can inspire one another if we give ourselves permission to admit that we're human. Of course we have struggles. Of course we experience pain. Didn't stop the people I'm talking to right now. I don't think so. So let's hear about that too. But we got to hear about both. See, it's not happy talk. It's not happy talk. It's telling those kinds of stories that can, honor, I guess, our sources of strength and survival.
Okay. So, Marshall, who is Rabbi Hillel, and how might his 3 questions guide healthcare workers in this historic moment today?
Sometimes the deepest truths are found in the oldest sources, because they're about wisdom. They're not about technology. They're about wisdom, about human beings. And I find that in the scriptures of many faiths. Rabbi Hillel was a first century scholar in Jerusalem, a contemporary of Jesus, who was a great teacher. And people would come to him and ask him, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? How can I choose what to do with my life? So he responded with these 3 questions that I find sort of fundamental. And like lots of fundamental things, it doesn't take a lot of words, because the words have depth. And the first question is to ask yourself, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? Now, that's not meant to be a selfish question at all. it is meant to be a question, a self-regarding question. In other words, to appreciate the values that you bring, to appreciate what you can contribute and what you can expect from, to have enough awareness of your own gifts, challenges, so that you can actually see other people clearly. So, starting, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But the second question is, if I am for myself alone, what am I? To be a human being, a who, and not a thing, a what, is to recognize that we exist in relationship with others in the world. Our capacity to realize our good is wrapped up with the capacity of others to realize theirs. And the last question he says to ask is, if not now, when? It's not advice to jump into moving traffic. It is a caution against what Jane Addams called the snare of preparation. Just another year of strategic planning, we'll have the perfect plan, then we'll go out and implement it, and the world will totally conform to our expectations, except that never happens. The point is that rarely can we learn how to do well what we want to do until we begin to do it. That understanding flows from action, which means that we are always acting into the uncertain because no one knows the future. And so finding the sources of hope, of courage, of solidarity to risk action, to risk action about which we cannot be certain because we can't be, that's how we get to where we need to get to in order to create the kind of change. So for me, those three questions kind of sum up what leadership is: about the relationship of oneself with others with respect to the action that we're called to do, and then the rest is all explanation and footnotes.
I think that's right too, Marshall. And healthcare workers have been called heroes for months on end now. And the truth is, many of them don't feel like heroes. They don't feel powerful. They feel a bit sacrificial.
Yep.
And what we're trying to do now is recognize that we have made sacrifices and found resilience, and we will do whatever it takes moving forward together. But sacrifice from a place of power and not sacrifice from a place of servitude, maybe?
Yeah, well, imposed sacrifice is not the same thing as voluntary sacrifice, because voluntary sacrifice is an investment. It's an investment. For some reason, it is worthy for you to make that sacrifice because it's like an investment in a better world, in the future, in your own life, in your children. When somebody comes along and says, hey, now you sacrifice, sorry, it's not longer a sacrifice, it's somebody extracting something from you. So sacrifice is chosen. And I think the challenge is, being applauded as being a hero is one thing. Stepping up to the institutional challenges that made things so hard, so difficult for so many people, that's where the real recognition is. And so now it's a question of turning the moral power that has drawn you through this into the political and economic power necessary to change those conditions. You know far better than I what those conditions are. But, it's great to say essential worker, but then not being treated as an essential human being because, they'll just do it. It's like, it's allowing the world to blackmail you on the basis of your own moral commitments. Not how it should work, not how we can let it work. So, sooner or later, debts become due. This country owes you a huge debt. So maybe it's time to collect. Don't you think so?
I think many of our members and healthcare workers absolutely agree with you, Marshall. They healthcare workers have been saying for decades that the way that we pursue healthcare in this country, the way that we prioritize profits over patient care is unsustainable and dangerous. And the pandemic really shined a very bright light on those fundamental cracks in the system. And so now my question for you is, in this historic moment, when the power of their life-saving labor has never been more deeply felt by so many, how do we tell our story of now?
Well, I think it's starting with telling your stories of self. It starts with introducing yourself about why you care. Who are you? Why do you care? Why have you chosen this calling? What has made healing such a powerful calling? What has made caring for others such a powerful calling? I mean, sometimes we may not express that, but surely that's at the heart of choosing this kind of a mission that you've chosen. People need to hear that, understand that it's not just like a healthcare machine or something. It's a human being who, and as such, we have the gift. We have the gift of being able to express love in many different ways, and caring for others is one of the most important ways. So who are you? Why are you doing that? Somebody do that for you? That's a story of self. Well, then it's by sharing. What is it that we all share here? We share these values, these commitments. We share the challenges we've faced. There's a lot that you share. That's a story of us, is about who we are. Then you get to the story of now, which is okay. Based on that, we're confronting some urgent problems right now. They were, as you said, unmasked by the pandemic. I mean, it's a sort of thing where, the morning after Trump was elected, some people discovered what was wrong in America, but a lot of people have known for a long time what's been wrong. Well, this sort of, I don't know, it's sort of sometimes you need to get the scales drop away from the eyes and see what's there. And one thing we saw is that, the story of the miner's canary. The miners used to take canary down into the mines because the canary had a weak respiratory system. And so if there was poison, the canary would keel over and the miners would know they needed to get out of there. Well, in times like we've been through, it's the most vulnerable who suffer the most immediate, the most clearly. And boy, we've been seeing that. We've been seeing that on health. We've been seeing it when it comes to jobs. We've been seeing it when it comes to essential work, on and on and on. So, this is a time to, can I say, confront people with the moral urgency of this. Are we dollar signs or are we human beings? I mean, okay, how many people when they're in stress from COVID, that the answer was like, oh, here, let me give you a $5 bill. That'll take care of you. That's not how it works. It's a human being capable of caring. Well, that carries a price tag. In other words, the price tag is this country needs to support that. And so it's sort of asserting your own humanity, your own value, your own gifts that you give every day to this country and the people in it. Well, you got some rights then to demand that this system, which is so problematic, far better than I how problematic. Higher cost, more limited resources for actual care. It's time to confront that reality. I can't imagine a better time than now. Because otherwise it kind of goes away and, oh, well, this, that, or the other. I think this is the time. I think it's a time to confront this administration. with what it needs to do, with state government, with what they need to do, to sort of stop treating people as profit centers, but as human beings with a right to live and to live a full life. That you can't value that in the marketplace. You value that because you value that. And it's up to the marketplace to find the resources to support something of far greater value than dollars and cents.
I love the way you just flipped the whole idea of the invisible hand of the market on its head, Marshall. We have value as human beings. We have value as caregivers that extend far beyond what sorts of profit someone else can make from our labor, and articulating and illustrating how that labor saves lives.
Yeah.
And the risk of losing it, because that is what will happen. Healthcare workers are suffering. They have trauma. They will have long-term mental health care needs from this pandemic. They have done too much with far too less for far too long. Now is our moment to say, this is not okay. We deserve better as caregivers. Our patients deserve better. Our communities deserve better too.
I think you also have a responsibility to be very clear about what better looks like. Because better can look like a lot of things. Better can be like, we're going to give some awards out. We'll recognize you. Better can be
pizza in the break room.
Yeah, no, or better can be getting at the core of what's wrong. You know, it's time not to just treat symptoms, but to treat causes. And we know what the causes are. We know operating this country's health, putting the health of our citizens, all of us, putting our health at the mercy of a market is inhuman, and it's irresponsible. It's also doesn't work. It also gobbles up resources, in making profit for people that don't deserve it. That's why we're the only country like that of the rich countries. We're the only one that doesn't get it. Well, I think it's time to get it. And that means real change. It means economic change. It means changing the way the whole system is working. I think it's important not to leave unclear what it will take to humanize our healthcare, because it isn't a human system right now. It's a profit-making system. So, look, and you got the moral authority to do that. It's not everybody has moral. You earn moral authority by walking the walk, but by living it. You've been doing that. That gives you a lot of moral authority, and you don't want to waste it. The country needs to be confronted with it. And for me, I just appreciate the chance to, maybe do a little preaching here. But no, because it's real. I really appreciate the chance to just have a few moments to share with you the enormous value that you not only have given but can bring to a system that is in dire need, not just of reform, but of transformation.
I think that that's a call to action for all of us from you, Marshall, and we're going to take it seriously. We take patient care seriously. We're here to do the right thing and to say explicitly what will make the system better and what we're willing to do to get it. Let me ask you one more question. It's slightly different. So I've heard you say that you have seen many people in positions of authority who do not demonstrate good leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also seen really great leadership demonstrated around many a kitchen table. our union was formed by a handful of registered nurses in Fontana, California, around a kitchen table. So, what is the magic about a crowded kitchen table for great organizing?
Well, I guess look at what happens around a kitchen table. First of all, look at who's there, and look at what they bring to it, and look at what they're there to do. What happens in a kitchen? What goes on there? What motivated them to come together around that kitchen table? Are they talking about theories of philosophy and no, they're talking about what's real, what's there, what they have to deal with. Now that's where reality is. It's not in these big slogans and fancy words. It's in the child who you have saved their life. It's in all the particular things that you do and that people sitting around a kitchen table often have been doing, if they're moms especially, right? And that's where reality is. And so it's starting with reality, and it's starting with a set of values, and it's recognizing that you need each other, it's not a solo deal. It's recognizing that it's about figuring out how to support one another, not compete with one another. It's understanding that in a team, each person's success depends on every other person's success. It's not a competition. We have to hold each other up. That's how it goes. So, I mean, I think there are other settings. Of course, there's workplaces, there's all sorts of places. Because this confusion about authority and leadership is a problem. Because often we associate leadership with positions of formal authority. I mean, we've had a lesson in this country about the difference between occupying positions of formal authority and exercising leadership, big time. And so it's not that one doesn't exercise leadership from a place of moral authority, but what's the difference? Well, the definition that I've come to use for leadership is that it's about accepting responsibility. It's about accepting responsibility for engaging with others, because it's not just you. It's not just, I'm a great leader because I'm cool. It's about engaging with others and enabling others to work together to achieve a shared purpose, a common purpose, under conditions of uncertainty. Because one thing is certain, that when things are going great, nobody says, where's the leadership, so we can thank them. It's the problems and the dilemmas and challenges. That's when they say, wait a second, where's the leadership? Because when everything's working, what do you need leadership for? It's the adaptive, creative, motivational capacity of leadership that is what leadership is really about. And so from that perspective, yeah, you find it lots of places. And you find it lots of places.
I really appreciate that, Marshall. On behalf of our 34,000 members, registered nurses, and healthcare professionals of UNAC UHCP, and the 21 unions of the Alliance of Healthcare Unions, we could not be more grateful for you to share this time and your wisdom with us. You're a blessing. Thank you.